integrated science assessment for particulate matter at EPA said for long-term effects of coarse particles, there is next to no evidence in support of long-term health effects. So I would urge all the members to support this legislation, and I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased at this time to yield 5 minutes to our senior member on the committee and former chairman of our committee, gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, this is a magnificent solution to a non-existent problem. But it's made a lot of money for a lot of lobbyists, and a lot of industrial polluters are going to enjoy this, hiding behind the supposed benefit that it's going to give to the farmers. In a nutshell, this legislation is not going to help the farmers. It's going to help the people who farm the farmers. And the end result is that when this nonsensical bill gets over to the courts are going to look at it and say, just what in the name of common sense is the House trying to do with this legislation? Nowhere in the Clean Air Act is a word about nuisance dust, but it's very prominently put here and in the legislation, and lo and behold, it also has something to do, supposedly, with some kind of action that EPA is supposed to take. But diligent looking at the legislation doesn't reveal what that might be. The question here then is, we have a solution in search of a problem, but we've got a job crisis in our nation, crippling debt, excessive deficit, gasping and gaping inequality between the poor and the well-to-do is putting democracy at risk. And when this country needs us to focus on serious problems like deficit and national debt, we are here busily scratching around to try and fit a solution on a problem that doesn't exist. The Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 were the last major changes to the original Clean Air Act of 1970. And unlike what we are piddling around with today, those legislations were needed, and they have served us well. And the Congress held lengthy hearings and did a tremendous amount of work to understand what it was. 18 months or so of consideration of the legislation led finally to its enactment, and it has cleaned up the air for our people. The amendments of 1990 were truly bipartisan, and only 4 of the 120 sponsors of this legislation are Democrats. 10 amendments were considered in the committee, but only 1 Democratic amendment was adopted. The final adoption of the legislation occurred strictly along partisan lines. It should be anyone clearly finding that this is not compromise legislation. Supporters insist the legislation is necessary due to uncertainty regarding EPA action. There is no uncertainty here. The Republican author of a similar Senate bill, a former Secretary of Agriculture, takes a different position. In one of his weekly columns, the Senate sponsor stated, "I ask only for clarity from EPA." And this week, Administrator Jackson finally provided it. It's obvious to our friends in the Senate and from the EPA Administrator itself that EPA will not implement stricter regulations. Even newspapers in the sponsor's home state have questioned the logic of this legislation. The Sioux Falls Leader wrote that the bill is fighting against a made-up problem and that it's time for the sponsor to let the phantom issue of dust regulation settle. The Yankton Daily Press and the Dakotan gave a thumbs-down signal on the bill, in which they say it is unnecessary. The 2 local papers wish that those who sponsor this legislation would stop trying to stir the fear of farmers and ranchers and instead spend time fighting real problems rather than those which are imaginary. This bill does not help the farmers and ranchers. It helps the people who farm the farmers and a fine collection of well-to-do lobbyists down on K Street who are profiting mightily on selling a nonsensical piece of legislation which wastes the time of Congress and does nothing for the farmers or the ranchers or the economy or the jobs. And so I hope that the House will reject these half-baked bills that are poorly written, contain no solutions, deal with no problems, help no one, and that the two parties can sit down and find real, important, reasoned compromises to real problems. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady, Mrs. Noem from South Dakota, who is a strong advocate for rural America and the creation of jobs in rural America.
Gentlelady from South Dakota is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise in strong support of H.R. 1633 because I co-authored this bill with my friend and colleague, Mr. Hurt from Virginia, and I did it to bring certainty, regulatory certainty, to farmers and ranchers across this country. Farmers and ranchers have been working on this issue for a long time. We look forward to passing it off the House floor today. It's not a partisan issue. I introduced this with my colleagues, Mr. Boswell and Mr. Kizel, and 121 of my colleagues from both sides of the aisle are co-sponsors. The Clean Air Act is a worthy goal, but it's not a perfect law, and it does have unintended consequences. My bill would improve the current statute. It also makes permanent what the administrator has said, which is that she said she did not intend to regulate farm dust. Well, the South Dakota Farm Bureau President, Scott Vanderwall, said, quote, "If we don't deal with this issue today, it's going to be right back here 5 years from now," unquote. I'd like to reiterate why this bill is necessary. First, farm dust is already regulated. It is not a myth. It's very real to all of my constituents. We heard testimony from farmers in the hearing in committee that they're currently being regulated as a result of the EPA standards. Regulation of farm dust is a problem today and will only continue to be a problem into the future if we do not pass this bill. If my colleagues will take the time to read the bill, they'll notice that this bill doesn't eliminate any regulations. It simply leaves the regulation of rural dust to the states and to the local communities who best understand how to manage what is happening in their own backyard. You know, too often bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., who've never stepped foot on a farm or lived in rural America try to impose a one-size-fits-all approach to regulations. Let's be realistic. Dust in rural America is not the same as dust in urban areas. It's a common sense that dust from a dirt road is much different from soot from a car. And it's common sense that they should be treated differently, which is exactly what this bill does. I would ask my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to consider this piece of legislation very carefully. Even if you're not from a rural area, this is still an important piece of legislation to all of us who rely on farmers to feed our families. You don't have to take my word for it. I have a letter right here of over 190 different organizations supporting this bill and its passage. Many of these organizations are local businesses and agriculture groups within all of our districts. They represent thousands and thousands of people across the country. Mr. Chairman, I ask that unanimous consent that this letter would be submitted for the record.
Without objection.
And let's not forget that we all reap the benefits of the success of our ag producers through safe, nutritious, and affordable food. Let's not burden our communities with overbearing regulations. Let's pass this common-sense legislation, provide farmers, ranchers, and local businesses with the certainty that they need in an already volatile industry. I urge all of my colleagues to join me in support of rural America and vote yes on H.R. 1633. And, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that my written statement be submitted for the record as well.
Request is covered by general leave. Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'm pleased to yield to the leading Democrat on the Energy Committee, the ranking member, gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, for 5 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the ranking member for his outstanding leadership and for yielding time to me. Mr. Speaker, I oppose this ill-conceived, nonsensical, and in all ways awful bill, H.R. 1633, which could have a devastating effect on the EPA's ability to enforce the Clean Air Act. on the basis of both procedural and substantive grounds. Mr. Speaker, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, scored this bill and determined that it would cost $10 million in discretionary spending over a 5-year period for the EPA to cover the cost of carrying out changes to existing emission control standards, as well as other activities to study the need and feasibility of modifying the EPA's National Monitoring Network for particulate matter as this bill requires. Since this $10 million is not appropriated anywhere in this bill would directly violate the discretionary cut-and-go policy that this majority, that my friends on the other side voted for, that they put in place at the beginning of this Congress. If we pass this bill, it would be the height of hypocrisy for this atrocious bill to get through this House. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of substance, I oppose this bill because it would dramatically weaken the Clean Air Act by eliminating the EPA's ability to regulate particulate matter from a broad range of sources, as well as jeopardize existing state and federal regulations that apply to fine and coarse particulate matter. Although the title of this bill suggests that it only covers dust from farms, this bill creates a whole new, broad, new, non-scientific category of pollution called, and I quote, nuisance dust, which it would exempt from the Clean Air Act completely. Nuisance dust will be exempted from the Clean Air Act totally, without any basis in science, no scientific evidence whatsoever, and that this bill would not do any harm to the public's health. The bill would exempt from the Clean Air Act any particulate matter pollution that is emanating from sources such as open pit mines, mining processing plants, sand and gravel mines, smelters, coal mines, coal processing plants, cement kilns, and waste and recovery facilities. These various facilities emit fine particulates, coarse particulates, arsenic, lead, mercury, cadmium, zinc, chromium, and other heavy metals, all of which could fall under this bill's broad exemption from the Clean Air Act. Mr. Speaker, as the American Lung Association noted, under the provisions of this bill, our country's most vulnerable populations, poor people, people who depend on the EPA to protect them from the harmful effects of coarse particulates, will be most affected. Children, teens, senior citizens, low-income people, people with chronic lung disease, such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema, will be especially at risk of being sickened by coarse particulates if this bill were to become a law. Additionally, people with other chronic diseases, such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, and congestive heart failure, they will all be placed at greater risk if this bill becomes law. Mr. Speaker, as was noted before, this bill is a solution in search of a problem, and it does more harm than good. This bill should fail. I oppose this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
I might say that during the debate on this bill in committee, a lot was made of mining activities in rural America, and I would just point out that there are 17 federal laws that mining operations must abide by, so we didn't feel like we needed to provide additional protection in that area. At this time, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt, who is one of the prime sponsors of this legislation and a protector of rural America. Recognize him for 3 minutes.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'd first like to thank Chairman Upton and Whitfield for their support for this effort, and to Representative Noem for her leadership and hard work on this legislation. Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong support of the Farm Dust Regulation Prevention Act. This is a bipartisan bill that I am proud to have sponsored along with Representatives Noem, Boswell, Kissel, in order to provide greater economic certainty to our rural communities in Central Virginia and Southside Virginia and across this country. Since January, this House has been laser-focused on advancing policies that will remove the federal government as a barrier to job creation and steer us on a course toward economic recovery, giving our job creators the opportunity to hire and the confidence to expand. It is with this in mind that we introduced this legislation. In Virginia's 5th District, my district, we have a proud heritage in agriculture, manufacturing, Main Street businesses that create jobs and have created jobs for thousands of Virginians. And as I travel across Virginia's rural 5th District, I am constantly reminded by my constituents of how government regulations threaten their businesses and their very way of life. This is why the EPA's national standard for fugitive dust is so troubling to the people that I represent. It is yet another example of the vast expansion of the federal government, and it is yet another example of the uncertainty that Washington continues to impose upon our job creators and our rural communities. The effects of federal government overreach are both very real and very tangible in the 5th District and across this country. This past year, I spoke with a small business owner in Southside Virginia who was warned by a regulator about the amount of dust coming from his property. And he was told to take active measures to decrease the dust coming from the dirt road leading in to his sawmill. This is the kind of unnecessary regulation that prevents businesses and farmers from focusing on the needs of their customers. Where I'm from, dust is not a nuisance. Rather, it is a necessary byproduct of the hard work the farmers and businesses in my rural district perform every day. And these farmers and businesses should not suffer loss in production because of overbearing federal regulations. These are the people who are struggling to survive, to grow, and to create jobs during this stalled economic recovery. And these are the people who cannot afford more costly and burdensome regulations handed down by Washington. While I applaud the EPA's apparent statement that it does not intend to propose a more stringent standard for coarse particulate matter at this time, I remain concerned about the uncertainty of current and future rulemaking. This bill addresses that uncertainty by providing clarity and stability for our job creators and by replacing the current federal standard for naturally occurring dust in rural America. With unemployment rates nearing 20% in some parts of my district, we simply can't afford to perpetuate unnecessary regulations and unnecessary uncertainty for the farmers and businesses in our rural communities. I strongly urge my colleagues to support this legislation so that we may assure our farmers and businesses that naturally occurring dust will not be subject to regulations by an ever-expanding federal government. I thank the Chair, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased at this time to yield to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, 5 minutes.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for how many minutes? 5 minutes. Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman. We are now debating on a very real piece of legislation that solves an imaginary problem. The Farm Dust Regulation Prevention Act purports to address the fictitious threat that the Environmental Protection Agency is out to destroy the family farm and countless jobs by regulating the dust emitted by tractors and other farming equipment. Never mind that EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson has committed to leaving the 1987 standard for large soot particles unchanged. And never mind that EPA Assistant Administrator Gina McCarthy essentially told the Energy and Commerce Committee that EPA was about as likely to regulate fairy dust as it was to regulate farm dust. while hiding behind its stated purpose of addressing the made-up threat of utter ruin to the family farm. This bill inflicts very real harm. That is because it also blocks the EPA from setting standards for the dirty soot that gets spewed out of massive mines and smelters and refineries and some chemical plants. It becomes, in fact, the congressional version of Never Never Land, where the Republicans' answer to the question, when can we remove the poisons from the air that we breathe, their answer is never. In the play Peter Pan, Tinker Bell drinks poison that is intended to kill Peter. She begins to die, but Peter Pan implores the audience to just clap their hands if they really do believe in fairies, and then maybe, just maybe, Tinker Bell won't die. Every small child in the audience then claps so hard their hands sting, and Tinker Bell rises magically back to life. With this bill, the Republicans are engaging in the very same sort of fantasy. If we just believe that EPA has launched a war on jobs, then it must be so, and we must stop it. If we just believe that EPA officials are lying about their secret, non-existent plans to destroy the livelihood of every farmer in America, then it must be so, and we must stop it. If we just believe that eviscerating every environmental law on the books will not lead to the real deaths of thousands of Americans each and every year, then it must be so. The Republican lost boys and girls are telling America that the only way to revive the jobs fairy is to kill the EPA, to pretend that the deaths, the cancers, and other illnesses that the Republican plan will cause are imaginary or a mere nuisance really is the stuff of fairy tales. Let us get back to reality and solve real problems in this country. Vote no on this very dangerous bill.
Gentleman from Kentucky.
The gentleman from Massachusetts may view this as about Peter Pan and Tinker Bell and fairy dust, but we have 197 organizations representing rural America that consider it a real problem. And at this time, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from West Virginia, a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. McKinley, for 1½ minutes.
Gentleman from West Virginia is recognized for 1½ minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in support of H.R. 1633, the Farm Dust Bill. Earlier this year, the House passed H.R. 2273, the bipartisan coal ash legislation. Unfortunately, opponents of the Farm Dust Bill believe that nuisance dust in this bill might include fly ash. Therefore, an amendment was offered and adopted to clarify that the definition of nuisance dust in the Farm Dust Bill does not include coal ash or other combustion residuals. The amendment makes it perfectly clear that nuisance dust is not comprised of any residuals from coal combustion. Unfortunately, opponents of the Farm Dust Bill are still apparently unaware of the changes that have been made to the bill to address their concerns. Don't oppose the Farm Dust Bill because you don't like fly ash. Let's relieve one more threat to our agricultural community with passage of this bill. We should be striving to create more jobs, not putting up more barriers with misinformation. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation and yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased now to yield to an important member of our committee, gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I rise in opposition to H.R. 1633, the Farm Dust Regulation Act of 2011. I know I just heard it referred to as Tinker Bell, but I think this is more like Alice in Wonderland legislation. It seeks to solve a problem that's not there while dancing around a lot of our real problems that we have to deal with in our country, and particularly this Congress. This bill would prohibit the EPA from proposing, finalizing, or implementing or enforcing any regulation revising the National Ambient Air Quality Standards applicable to coarse particulate matter for 1 year from the date of enactment. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson committed in a October 14, 2011 letter that the EPA plans to propose keeping the PM10 National Ambient Air Standard as it is with no change. This standard has been in place since 1987. I have a letter with me. I'd like to request permission to insert into the record, Mr. Speaker, from the Lisa Jackson, Administrator of the EPA.
Request is covered under general leave.
Thank you. When Gina McCarthy, the Assistant Administrator for Air and Radiation at EPA, testified before our Energy and Power Subcommittee of the full committee, she also confirmed that this bill is not necessary since the Administrator plans to propose retaining the current standard since 1987. For this reason, that's why I do not support H.R. 1633 when it's up for a vote, when it came up for a vote in our Energy and Commerce Committee, and I encourage my colleagues to oppose it today. I have very public disagreements with the EPA on other regulations they're revising, but this bill is a solution in search of a problem and is not a good use of our congressional time. Taking up a bill that's not necessary hurts our efforts to work with EPA and revise some of the standards EPA is doing that are real problems. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I urge a no vote on this bill.
Gentleman from Kentucky.
This time I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Pompeo, who's a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for yielding to me. This is a great day for rural America. H.R. 1633 is going to do what we've been trying to do for a long time here, my entire 11 months in the United States Congress, provide just a little bit of certainty for those folks who are out there trying to create jobs, trying to create food for America, trying to do the things that we've done in the rural parts of our country for so long. Truth is, the other side continues to say we are shooting at fairy dust and talking about Tinkerbell. I can assure you that I'm not amused. I can assure you that the 500 folks who I met with just 2 weeks ago now at the Kansas Farm Bureau meeting were not amused either. We understand that the very real risk of Lisa Jackson and the environment beginning to clamp down on farm dust still exists. We worked in our committee diligently. There were some valid concerns raised by folks on the other side, and we endeavored, Mr. Chairman, at every moment to try and meet those concerns. We offered amendments. I offered an amendment in the nature of a full substitute which tried to address some of the concerns that the opposition expressed. Truth is, they just want to leave our farmers and ranchers and our agricultural community at the whims of the EPA. That's not the place to put good, hard-working Americans who are out there every day trying to do the right thing. The whims of the EPA we have seen all too often present real risk, a real risk of job destruction, real risk of higher costs for every consumer in America. This is a wonderful piece of legislation. It will, for the first time, get the EPA to move their hands away from the throats of our farmers and agriculture communities, and I would urge every one of my colleagues to support it. With that, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, the standard that's in place, it has been in place since 1987 when Reagan was president. It has not been changed. Suddenly, there's a made-up fear that it's going to be changed, and therefore we have the legislation that's before us. We hear a lot about certainty. If this bill goes through, the certainty will be that there'll be no regulation because EPA will no longer have jurisdiction. The other certainty is that a lot of people are going to get very sick from some dangerous pollutants. At this time, I wish to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. This bill is dangerous and its title is disingenuous. H.R. 1633 is about much more than farm dust. Our colleague, Mr. Shimkus, acknowledged that in the Energy and Commerce Committee markup of this bill last week when he said, quote, "It is called farm dust, but I am here for my open pit mines in southern Illinois," unquote. The bill allows major industrial polluters to emit unlimited amounts of particulate matter in violation of the Clean Air Act. Mines, cement plants, and coal processing plants could legally emit unlimited amounts of dangerous chemicals into the air. Let's be clear. The chemicals we are talking about are incredibly dangerous. Arsenic overexposure leads to skin, bladder, liver, and lung cancer. Lead exposure can damage the central nervous system, kidney, and blood cells. Cadmium exposure leads to severe respiratory damage. Zinc poisoning leads to kidney damage. Mercury pollution results in cognitive deficiencies, especially in children. Those pollutants emitted from a range of non-farm sources could fall under the vague definition of nuisance dust. It seems to me that this is a piece of legislation that is being disguised as something innocuous, as farm dust, something that has been pointed out has been regulated for a very long time. This is an effort to get around the legislation with a phony name, to get around the effectiveness of the Environmental Protection Agency, and we owe it to our constituents and our country to promote legislation that will stimulate the economy, which our environmental bills do, and protect and promote human health and the environment. Our colleagues across the aisle have failed in that regard, and I urge a no vote. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, may I inquire how much time is remaining on?
Gentleman has 12 1/2 minutes remaining. The side in opposition has 7 minutes remaining.
7 and 12. This time I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 2 1/2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm amused, humored by the opposition, all hailing from our greatest cities in the United States, urban areas. So let me, I'd like to read a note that I received from rancher in Nebraska, and our Nebraska cattlemen, representing those who are affected. The bill is needed to provide regulatory certainty to rural areas. We applaud the recent statement from Administrator Jackson that EPA does not intend to propose revisions to the current dust standard. The reality is, however, that regulations often change from the proposal stage of rulemaking to final. For example, in 1996, EPA proposed to remove the PM10 24-hour standard altogether, only to bring it back in the final rule, and in 2006, EPA proposed to exempt agriculture dust, but that exemption also disappeared in the final rule. Second, under the Clean Air Act, EPA must review this standard every 5 years. That means we could face the same dust challenge again in just 5 short years. Also, citizen lawsuits could be brought that could result in a court deciding farm dust should be regulated. H.R. 1633 is the only way to provide regulatory certainty to farmers. Nuisance dust occurs naturally in rural areas. This type of nuisance dust that is in this bill would exempt federal regulations, occurs naturally in rural areas, especially in arid and windy areas of plains and western states. This dust does not stay in the air but falls out quickly. Rural fugitive dust travels only a short distance from emission point. It settles out of the air quickly because of its size, making dust a localized issue. In fact, according to a study done by Hofnagel, rural dust will fall out of the air within 1,000 meters of its source. This is not fairy dust or fables or tales to our folks in rural America. This is real, and they want certainty. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, we continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Kentucky.
This time I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Kozar.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 1 1/2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the Farm Dust Regulations Preventive Act brought today by my friend and colleague, Congresswoman Kristi Noem. This good piece of legislation is a common-sense solution to a bureaucratic problem that is causing concern among many Arizonans. It's almost unfathomable to think that this legislation is necessary to protect Arizona against federal bureaucrats who want to regulate dust, but here we are. That's exactly what the EPA is doing with its overreaching policies, holding individuals and businesses accountable for naturally occurring dust particles. I stand here today to raise my voice against the unreasonable federal regulations, which would allow simple haboobs, dust clouds, and windstorms to pose a threat to the economic livelihood of farmers in and around my district. It is important to also note that this bill covers dust, which has been found to have no adverse human health effects. Also notable among this bill's many supporters are the Arizona Farm Bureau Federation, the Arizona Cattle Feeders Association, the Arizona Cattle Growers Association, the Arizona Cotton Growers Association, and the National Cattlemen's Association. Again, I support this legislation and encourage you to pass this good bill today. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, we continue to reserve our
Gentleman
time.
reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky.
This time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Barton.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. With the economy the way it is, with unemployment very high, we don't need more government regulations. More regulations strangle the private sector and create more economic problems. Especially right now, we don't need more regs. The Obama administration continues to circumvent Congress to go around us by passing more regulations, and the economy can't stand it. We need to stop more regulations. Even the threat of more regulations must be stopped. I mean, farm dust, give me a break. We can't give these bureaucrats more authority. We don't need to give this administration or the bureaucracy more control over the lives of Americans. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California, continue to reserve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to inquire how many speakers there are on the other side of the aisle.
I believe we have maybe a couple, 2 or 3 left, and that's it.
Well, we'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky.
At this time, I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Manzula.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I often hear complaints from farmers back home about the numerous regulatory burdens placed on them by the government. In fact, this whole past summer, we worked with farmers who have been in a real brouhaha with the EPA concerning the runoff from their stockyards, and even small ones at that. Life-threatening types of regulations to continuing their farming. And now we come up with another one, this one on dust. EPA is in the process of reviewing its dust standards. In 2009, the EPA said farm dust, quote, likely is not safe, end of quote, and could cut the allowable dust levels in half. Because of the furor created, EPA said last October they would not regulate farm dust. First they said they would regulate it, now they said they won't regulate it. So to codify this understanding or these contradictory statements by the EPA, I'm sure that all of my colleagues will have no problem in voting for this bill. H.R. 1633 will prevent the EPA from imposing new federal regulations on natural occurring dust in rural America. It will allow states and localities to regulate farm dust as they see fit based on sound science. Farmers in Illinois already struggle to comply with current standards. If Washington imposes another one-size-fits-all solution to dust, this could mean even more unemployment in rural areas throughout Illinois and the nation. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1633, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I want to thank the ranking member for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I want to share with the members of this body the administration's position on this particular bill that we're under discussion right now. This is a statement of administration policy, and I quote, "The administration strongly opposes H.R. 1633. As drafted, this bill will create serious problems for implementing the Clean Air Act public health protections that have been in place for years. while adding uncertainty for businesses and states. The bill, therefore, goes far beyond its stated intent of prohibiting the EPA from tightening national standards for coarse particles, which the administration has repeatedly explained that it has no intention of doing. It goes on to say, this ambiguously written bill will create high levels of regulatory uncertainty regarding emission control requirements that have been in place for years. Specifically, the bill's exclusion from the entire CAA of a new class of air pollutants called nuisance dust, an imprecise and scientifically undefined term, could be used to roll back existing public health protections, limiting pollutions from mining operations, industrial standards, and possibly other sources. The bill also raises serious issues about whether the EPA could continue to implement the existing health-based fine and coarse particle programs, which play a vital ongoing role in preventing adverse health effects of air pollution, including premature death, child asthma, and other respiratory diseases.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. The administration remains committed to common sense approaches to improving air quality across the country and preserving the competitiveness of every economic sector. Because H.R. 1633 is not only unnecessary, but could also have significant adverse public health consequences, the administration strongly opposes this bill. H.R. 1633, if it were presented to the President, his senior advisors would recommend that he veto this bill. Why are we wasting our time on this nuisance, which is nonsense? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
This time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold.
Gentleman from Texas, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I rise today in disgust with the dust. The regulations of the Environmental Protection Agency are proposing to regulate coarse particulate matter. What you and I know as dust is ridiculous. It's indicative of what is wrong in Washington, D.C. with a regulatory framework that has gone wild. This just defies common sense. You cannot farm without kicking up dust. I was raised on the farms and ranches in South Texas. As we drive to tend the cattle herds, till the fields, or check out what's going on, there's no way to do it without dust. This opens the door to massive regulations. First, we start with the farmer. Where is the EPA going to be next? Checking under my bed for dust bunnies, putting on a white glove, running their fingers across the top of my doors, or making sure my car is adequately washed? The EPA's regulations on this are the height of government overreach, the height of waste of time, the height of waste of money, and a perfect example of what is wrong with Washington. We have got to stop this type of crazy government regulation so we can get people back to work, we can get jobs on track, we can keep our farmers feeding our country and the world. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, the unemployment rate in this country is close to 9%, and we're not doing anything about that problem. The deficit is a real threat to our economy, and the Republicans nearly made us default on our debts because they wouldn't go along with a real deficit reduction bill. We are looking at sequestrations of our national budget for the military, which our Secretary of Defense says it could be a threat to the nation. And that sequestration will take place because the Republicans wouldn't allow the so-called super committee to do its job. I want to read from an editorial in the Argus leader, Sioux Falls. There are important issues at the federal level right now that will have a direct impact on our state. The dwindling funding for the Lewis and Clark Water Project, the fight to maintain our state's Medicare reimbursements, former frontier states' provisions. These are real issues, and I mentioned real issues. So it's disappointing to see this fight against a man-made problem like the potential for farm dust regulations by the EPA. When the EPA announced it would not pursue anything along these lines, and they had no intention to do it, the Senate sponsor of this same bill declared victory, and he pulled back on his companion bill for the other body. The Republicans ought to declare victory and allow us to deal with the real problems in this country, not this made-up threat that they want to help protect us from. I reserve the balance of our time, whatever time we still may have. I urge members to vote against this bill, and we'll see how much more debate there is on the other side of the aisle.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, I've been told that we have no further speakers, so if the gentleman from California would like to close, then I would follow him.
We're ready to yield back our time.
Oh, you're yielding back time?
We'll yield back our time if you're ready to yield back your time.
Does the gentleman yield back his time? Gentleman from California.
I yield back our time.
Wait a minute, I want to make clear. I want to just make a couple of minutes of statement in closing. So would you want to speak again, Mr. Waxman?
Well, then I'll reserve whatever time we have.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Don't I have the right to close?
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to close.
Go ahead and close. Go ahead and close.
Okay.
Does the gentleman from California yield back his time?
If the gentleman from Kentucky has the right to close, I will yield back our time.
Okay. Gentleman yields back his time.
Let him make his close.
The gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Well, thank you very much, and we certainly do appreciate this discussion on this important bill. I can tell you that rural America does consider this to be a real problem. The gentleman from California mentioned, correctly so, that we're operating under 1987 particulate matter standards. In 1997 and 2006, EPA went back to review that standard. And they made a determination at that time that they would not take further action, but they were sued. Litigation ensued, and every 5 years, EPA is required by the Clean Air Act to look at this. And we know there are going to be further lawsuits. And so that's why we think it's absolutely mandatory that Congress assert itself and set out the policy that we do not want EPA regulating the dust on farms and ranches in America. I might also add that in a letter we received from the Board of Supervisors, the County of Imperial in Arizona, under the existing standard that EPA is operating under, they said the original rule that EPA had covered farms of 40 acres or more, which is 97% of all farmland in the valley. EPA is now insisting that that be changed to all farms of 10 acres or more. And for what purpose? It seems clear that there is absolutely no justification for imposing requirements that would have a negative impact on the economy and the employment in Imperial County, when the rules and controls would not change the ability of the county to meet the standards on the few high particulate matter days that are caused by exceptional events. So, in closing, I would simply say we view this as a real problem. Congress needs to assert itself and set a definitive policy on this issue. And I would urge all members to support this legislation and would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Energy and Commerce printed in the bill shall be considered as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered read. No amendment to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in House Report 112-317. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report by a member designated in the report, shall be considered read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 1, printed in House Report 112-317. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in House Report number 112-317, offered by Mr. Rush of Illinois.
Pursuant to House Resolution 487, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Speaker, if the premise of this bill is to simply provide regulatory certainty to rural farmers and reiterate what Administrator Jackson has already publicly stated, that the EPA would not alter the Bush-era standards for coarse particulate matter, then the Rush Amendment would satisfy that objective. During the subcommittee's hearing on H.R. 1633, we heard testimony from the bill's sponsor that the intent of this legislation was to address the regulatory uncertainty over, quote, farm dust, end quote. However, during that same hearing, we heard testimony from the Assistant Administrator of the Office of Air and Radiation, Gina McCarthy, where she expressed serious concerns over the ambiguous language in the bill and the overly broad impact it could have on existing Clean Air Act programs. Mr. Speaker, the Rush Amendment would remove the ambiguity and provide clarity to the bill's intent so that we can keep in place standards to protect our nation's most vulnerable population. At the end of Section 2, my amendment would add the following: nothing in this act precludes the administrator from proposing, finalizing, implementing, or enforcing the National Primary Ambient Air Quality Standard or the National Secondary Air Quality Standard for PM 2.5, end of quote. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, because there is such widespread suspicion that the real intent of this bill is to roll back existing clean air protections, my amendment would strike Section 3 altogether, which contains the most overly ambiguous and excessively broad provisions of the bill. In Section 3, the bill's exclusion for particulate matter from combustion would not exclude particulate pollution from sources such as open pit mines, mining processing plants, sand and gravel mines, smelters, coal mines, coal processing plants, cement kilns, and waste and recovery facilities. Ms. McCarthy raised serious concerns about the effect of this bill on existing health-based standards due to the fact that the term, quote, nuisance dust, end quote, is not a scientifically defined term, and it would be very difficult to incorporate into a scientifically based program. As Ms. McCarthy noted, and I quote, coarse materials have been linked to a variety of adverse health effects, including hospital visits relating to cardiovascular and respiratory disease and premature death. While the body of scientific evidence is much more limited for coarse PM than for fine particles, the agency's review of the studies indicate that short-term exposure to coarse particles remain a concern, and I end the quote. Mr. Speaker, the Rush Amendment will provide regulatory certainty to rural farmers while also protecting our nation's most vulnerable population, including our children, our senior citizens, people with low income, and the people with chronic lung disease such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. Mr. Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to support my amendment, and with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, while I have a great deal of respect and admiration for the gentleman from Illinois, I am going to oppose this amendment. I would say, first of all, that this legislation does not change in any way the current EPA standard relating to particulate matter on coarse materials. His amendment would strike the provision in the bill addressing nuisance dust, keeping only that which prohibits a change to the existing PM10 standard for 1 year, which we agree with. But because it strikes Section 3, which is the main part and the substantive part of this bill, because it would eliminate our nuisance dust definition, I would respectfully oppose the amendment and urge all members to vote no on the amendment.
Did the gentleman yield back his time?
I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Independent of the chair, the noes have it.
Ask for a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 2, printed in House Report 112-317.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I am offering this amendment. I have an amendment at the desk.
Is the gentleman the designee from
Yes.
the gentleman or gentlelady from Virgin Islands?
Mr. Chairman, I am the designee to offer this amendment. Oh, Mr. Chairman, it's not necessary because the author of the amendment is here, and I would have her. I think it would be more appropriate for her to offer the amendment, which I strongly support.
Does the gentlelady offer the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have a Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in House Report number 112-317, offered by Mrs. Christensen of Virgin Islands.
Pursuant to House Resolution 487, the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill stands as an effort to dramatically weaken the Clean Air Act and delay implementation of vital public health protections against toxic particles. The adverse health effects of particulate matter are serious and have been well documented. Thousands of studies published over the last 9 years make a much stronger case for the regulation of fine particles and indicate that the current standards must be revisited in order to ensure that the public health is protected. The major health effects of fine particulate matter include reduced lung function, cough, wheezing, missed school days due to respiratory symptoms, increased use of asthma medication, strokes, emergency room visits, hospital admissions, lung cancer, and premature death, at levels well below the current national air quality standards. This bill, H.R. 1633, eliminates EPA's authority to control so-called nuisance dust, except in a very narrow set of circumstances. First, the administrator must find that nuisance dust causes substantial adverse public health and welfare effects. Second, even if the administrator determines that nuisance dust causes substantial harm, she must also find that the benefits of regulating nuisance dust outweigh the costs, including aspects on employment. This approach upends the way EPA has been setting health-based air pollution standards for 40 years. The Clean Air Act requires EPA to set each air quality standard based purely on science and medical evidence showing the health effects of exposure to the pollutant. The standard basically identifies the level of pollution that's safe to breathe, The Clean Air Act also requires EPA to set the standard with an adequate margin of safety to account for uncertainty and protect sensitive subpopulations such as children with asthma. Essentially, this bill would require EPA to determine the level of air pollution that is safe to breathe based on cost of control, not medical evidence. Third, under this bill, the administrator only has this limited authority in areas where state, local, or tribal governments are not regulating nuisance dust. But the bill provides no minimum standard of protection, no federal floor. That means that even the most minimal state or local requirement is sufficient to bar EPA action on anything that falls under the definition of nuisance dust. It's absurd, Mr. Chair, to claim that any state or local dust regulation, no matter how minimal, would be sufficient to protect the public health. We've tried to address air pollution only on the state and local level throughout the 1960s. It did not work. Companies blocked cleaner air protections by threatening to leave for other states with weaker standards. This widely acknowledged failure produced overwhelming support for the cooperative federalism approach embodied in the Clean Air Act since 1970. Under this approach, the federal government sets minimum uniform standards to protect health, and states and localities then decide how to achieve those standards. Since 1970, every American has had the same basic right to clean and healthy air. My amendment simply preserves those rights. It ensures that the residents of every state and locality are afforded a baseline level of protection against particle pollution. My amendment says that if the state, local, or tribal laws are not sufficient to protect public health from exposure to dangerous particle pollution, then EPA has the authority under the Clean Air Act to step in and take action to reduce that pollution. This bill tries to turn back the clock to a time when the state and local air pollution laws weren't strong enough to protect public health. Those who are ignorant of history are doomed to repeat it. Let's learn our history and recognize that both states and the federal government play valuable roles in ensuring that Americans breathe clean and healthy air. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved.